All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Matt here, and welcome back to Meta Monday, the weekly series where we analyze the Pokemon Pocket metagame and keep you guys up to date on everything going on in the competitive world of Pokemon Pocket. The Pocket Mats Pocket Tournament number 9 was this past weekend. Over 700 people still competing, some of the best Pokemon Pocket players in the entire world, honestly. Competed for a $250 prize pool. We're going to break down the final standings, break down all of the best decks. I'm going to give my input on, how the metagame is developing, which cards, which strategies I think are kind of on the up, which are on the down, and we're going to review it all here in today's video. But before we do that, you guys got to go ahead and register for PMPT number 10, the next Pocket Mats tournament coming this weekend, Saturday, November 29th at noon. As always, it's always at the same time on Saturday. What's really cool here is that we're continuing the tournament series even after, of course, ranked releases. And we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. You're going to be hearing a lot more about ranked as it kind of comes out here in the next few days. I believe 3 days from now, this Thursday, which is Thanksgiving, I think, coincidentally. Ranked comes back, and this is going to be a really big deal because on our channel we're competitively focused, and of course the ranked battles are a really big part of that. So I expect maybe less people to be, to be competing in this upcoming weekend. Of course, it's holiday season and ranked returns, so we might not get 700 plus people, but if enough people sign up for this weekend's tournament, we might add something a little spicy to the prize pool. So go register. Link down in the description below. I would definitely recommend you guys and go register. It's going to be a whole lot of fun, and yes, we will be continuing the tournament series and the live streams and everything even after ranked releases. And like I said, ranked is coming out later this week. We'll have a whole bunch of content around ranked, and we'll be live streaming ranked battles as well. But anyway, let's get into the final standings of this past weekend's tournament. Like I said, over 700 people playing or played this weekend. So let's see what we have for the standings. Here we go. This is what we're looking at, and it's a little bit interesting here. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. This was a very interesting weekend for meta development. In fact, it's almost sort of like a recursion, right? I think that we've sort of backpedaled a little bit, and I think that, it took a little bit longer than we anticipated, but realistically, I think that the metagame is really showing its true colors right now. And I think that really all of the top decks and all of the top strategies are really shining through right now as things become incredibly balanced, and as they were really balanced going into this weekend. So, Deister from Venezuela, 13-1-1, gets first place this weekend, and he was playing Hydreigon. Yes, so Hydreigon Absol got first place. I think this is like the first major tournament win for Hydreigon specifically, not the first for Absol, but definitely for Hydreigon. One thing that we'll notice here in the standings is not much Oricorio, which is interesting. I think that Oricorio definitely isn't as well positioned now as it was before. Hydreigon, definitely a decent reason for that. We have Deister in first place, but we also have Lelek 2000 from Germany here in 9th place, and another Hydreigon here, Reaper TRG from Taiwan in 11th place. So Hydreigon, a couple of placements here at the top. Of course, the first place finish, definitely impressive here. But one thing is for sure about Hydreigon is that this is kind of the new high roll right now. I think that a lot of people are kind of shifting from things like Blaziken or maybe some other high roll rare candy type decks, and they're kind of moving more towards the Hydreigon option. I think that the back end of the deck list with Absol definitely sets this deck up to be strong in the early game potentially, but have decent legs in that mid to late game. Just a really powerful deck list, and again, maybe not the most consistent strategy in the entire world, but definitely one of the most volatile. First place finish for Deister, congratulations. So Quadro from nowhere, I guess, just didn't list his country, maybe it wasn't available on Limitless. He's got second place. He went all the way to grand finals playing Naganadel Mega Absol. So here's going to be sort of a more aggro, more consistent version, early game focused version of Absol, of course. And I say these are Absol decks, but they're really not like Absol decks. They're just sort of dark type decks, that can just throw Absol into them, which is, I think, really what the development of the metagame is right now. It's funny because we talked a lot on Friday about this very fact, and I was sort of mentioning that the metagame was trending, and this is, if you watched our video on Friday, I was talking about how the metagame really was developing in a way where all of these really strong dark type strategies were kind of becoming common. They were being developed and they were being finalized, and then you just throw in a Mega Absol in there, and all of a sudden you have a really strong card to finish the game, and that's what we've really seen. In fact, both decks here in Grand Finals are examples of that, almost entirely. Hydreigon being a bit of a more high roll option to pair with Absol, but then we have, poison aggro, dark Ultra Beast combo, right, with Naganadel and with Nihiligo, right? So just like we were playing with Guzzler, but now we just have Absol on the back end instead of Guzzler. Somebody mentioned this a while ago, and yeah, it ends up being pretty strong. What the Sigma finds its way back up at the top of the standings, playing Mega Altaria and Indeedee. Of course, we even have Cosmu here from France, and then Gaib, I don't know, 85, also from France. I don't know the name. 6th place, also with Mega Altaria. And then Froggy X Tachi from France as well. All of the French players, I suppose, playing Mega Altaria. But plenty of them at the top of the standings. And then even down here, PXG Fiumba from Argentina. If we go down, there's a bunch of Altaria. So I think that this is sort of the constant right now. It's been a little while since Mega Altaria won one of our tournaments, but it's always at the top of the standings. At this point, I would really consider Mega Altaria to be kind of that gold standard of the metagame in terms of its consistency. So just because it hasn't won in the last couple of weeks, but it's been placing 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th all over the place, this to me is probably the most consistent deck in the game, and overall just kind of the top dog, I would say, in terms of meta, I guess, like meta share, and then just sort of overall impact on the metagame, right? The thing about Mega Altaria is that you can build it so many different ways. It's very flexible, very consistent, and you kind of always know what you're getting. Insert, Genetic Apex, Circle Circuit, Pikachu comparison, right? Because that's really what this is. It's the more consistent option right now in this new metagame. So shout out to What the Sigma. Joni here from Germany was playing Suicune EX and Greninja EX, as we talked about on Friday, sort of the updated version of Suicune and Greninja that, things have finally flipped in terms of Suicune. We'll take a look at the deck lists in a little bit. But Joni in 4th place here, as well as Nastcon, another familiar face, getting 7th place here with Suicune Greninja, and then Kira 222222 from Japan, also playing Suicune Greninja. So yeah, that's sort of the concept here, right? Sort of these dark type Absol package deck lists, particularly Hyrule and Hydreigon, and then we have Altaria and Indeedee, and then Suicune Greninja. Like, those really are kind of the top dogs right now, and at least in terms of popularity and in tournament placements. The big question people might be asking, right? Where is Blaziken? We don't even see a Blaziken here all the way down until 31st place. And yes, that is the other big development right now. I think that the other decks in the format are kind of taking a page out of Blaziken Heatmore's book, and I think that for a brief moment, Blaziken really was at the forefront, playing things like Heatmore in the deck lists. But now what we're seeing is Absol, of course, playing, the leap over Absol. Jirachi is still seeing a lot of play in Altaria. So the metagame, and of course, there's Greninja and Suicune, right? So the metagame kind of developed. It sort of took a page out of Blaziken and Heatmore's book, and now every deck is effectively Blaziken Heatmore, but maybe a little bit stronger in some ways. So yeah, I would say that Blaziken is kind of being pushed out, and we're definitely seeing a pretty clear trend here. There are some other standouts. Of course, we do see the Magnezone Oricorio here in 12th place. This is definitely not a deck list that I would consider to be amongst the most popular, just because most people don't really love to play Oricorio, but at least for the moment, this is still kind of the premier way to play Oricorio. We even saw here SG Raydorm from Spain was playing Altaria with Giratina, so this is another interesting variant of Altaria that always actually performs pretty well. He was in 13th place. We even had a Crobat EX deck again, so just like I was telling you, there's all of these really strong sort of dark type packages, and all you have to do is throw Mega Absol into it, and then you have a late game option. So Crobat EX really is no different. It's kind of also a high roll deck here in the sense that Hydreigon is, but it has more HP and doesn't deal as much damage, right? So it's also a stage 2 Pokemon. So it's interesting, right? I think that you could basically just play Crobat in place of Hydreigon because it's only a 1 energy attack cost, which is kind of what this player did. We'll take a look at all these deck lists soon. Some Quad Absol decks as we go down here. Again, 1 Blaziken Heatmore. So the diversity here definitely becoming a little bit less and less diverse, realistically, as time goes on. So that's the final standings. Let's dive into the deck lists, and I'll really kind of give my opinions about all of them in more detail. So this is the first place deck here from Deister. Again, got first place, Hydreigon, Mega Absol, with 1 leap over Absol as well. So as you can see, right, we're not playing Chingling in this list, and that is an interesting development. Chingling is a good card, and it can be good in the mirror matchup, but what we see oftentimes now in these dark type decks is things like Absol to just sort of, soak up hits, like the leap over Absol, right? This is very common in other Absol decks. It's a very, very good card, just like Heatmore was a good card in the face of Chingling. It can soak up damage and then just target bench Pokemon while Chingling doesn't really do anything, right? It just sort of puts the item lock on, but that doesn't matter matter as long as we're chipping a bench Pokemon for 30, game and turn after turn after turn, right? So, Leap over Absol, a very important inclusion in these dark type decks, but really kind of changing the metagame in a lot of different ways here. And then it's just Hydreigon. And, if anybody watched the tournament stream, and by the way, I was not available on Sunday for Top Cut, but if you watched this player, if you watched the finals, you would be shocked as to how many times these people got their turn 2 Rare Candy Hydreigon combo out. And that's what it's all about, right? I mean, the power of Hydreigon is the possibility. It's a very volatile card. It's the possibility of having this thing on your second turn, going first or second, and beginning to swing for 130 damage. It's just very difficult to deal with something like that because of that pressure. And then, of course, if Hydreigon goes down, we have a Leap over Absol. Sometimes we have a second Hydreigon, which we saw a couple of times on the live stream. And then to finish it all off, then they have to go through a Mega Absol, right? And we have Rocky Helmets along the way. We are seeing one Cyrus, one Sabrina. So this is something that we're seeing a little bit more commonly now, which I think is probably fine. I think that people understand that Cyrus is a really, really strong win condition, but you got to understand that half the time Sabrina is functioning just like an Absol, or just like, a Cyrus, where it's doing the same thing, especially if your Pokemon doesn't, or if your opponent doesn't have a ton of Pokemon on their bench. And most of the time, like in the late game, your opponent, you just need one prize anyway. So whether you're bringing up, an already damaged Mega Pokemon or a single prize Pokemon, it's going to give you that prize anyway to finish the game. So Sabrina can be really useful in the early game as well. So, Cyrus really good for the late game as a win condition, but Sabrina, like imagine bringing up that Torchic on the bench, or bringing up that Dino before it can evolve, or bringing up a Mega Absol that's on the bench early in the game that doesn't have any energies onto it. Like that matters a lot. It's a really, really big deal. So I think that we're going to see probably a more common inclusion of Cyrus plus Sabrina. There are going to be some strategies, of course, that maybe rely on double Cyrus, right? If you're playing a deck that's a little bit more reliant on dealing bench damage, then sure, right? We might play double Cyrus, but in a deck list like this with only one Leap over Absol, it makes a little bit more sense to play one Cyrus, one Sabrina. And of course, we have the Copycat Red card combo. These are things that are just going to be in basically every deck list. And then of course, Rocky Helmet, being the best damage modifier in the entire game right now, specifically for Mega Pokemon. It really does add up a lot of damage, and it adds up to be really good numbers, right? That's 150 if you combine the 20 damage from Rocky Helmet and the 130 Hyper Ray from Hydreigon. That is 150 damage. That's very, very relevant. So this deck list has it all. I think that this is sort of the high roll deck of the meta right now, and I think that people are just preferring to play Hydreigon above things like Rare Candy Mega Blaziken in my mind. So big shout out to Deister, big shout out to Hydreigon. This was a deck list that I always knew could win just because of its volatility, its potential to be incredibly strong. As it turns out, this weekend was the weekend, and Deister was the guy, right? He just sort of drew the right cards, made the right plays, and just sort of, did his thing. It's really what it comes down to, right? I know that, in a top cut bracket, like so many things do come down to luck and variability and variance and just hitting the correct matchups, drawing the right cards. Like so much is part of that. But I think people take for granted how many games these people have to play without throwing any of the games, right? It's a lot easier than you would think to make one play that costs you the game. To not do that at all throughout an entire tournament run is very impressive. So shout out to all of these players. Again, some of the best players in the entire game. This is going to be Quadro's deck, and this is Naganadel Absol. So I think what's really interesting is that we're seeing both sides of sort of the dark type coin, which is that we're playing, high roll Mega Absol, or we're playing aggro Mega Absol. And I think that both archetypes are very strong. There's some things about this deck list that personally I don't really love, but there's some things that I absolutely love, right? So the Naganadel Nihilego combo is exceptional, right? Not only can it deal with Oricorio very easily, but it can go through like a Heatmore or a Leap over Absol really quickly, right? So it's just a Pokemon that can deal a lot of damage on your second turn going first. And it is a going first Pokemon, right? Because it only has one energy in its attack cost. That's a very unique thing in the metagame right now. I can also just destroy baby Pokemon that are in the active spot. It's got a decent amount of HP at 100, but the Nihilegos and the poison damage overall really does add up. And we've seen Poison Mega Absol kind of pop in and out of the metagame over the last few weeks, and I think at this point, people are kind of really fully committing to the Poison strategy with Naganadel. We even saw like a Weezing, like a Genetic Apex Weezing deck, which is effectively the exact same thing, but probably worse in some ways. Mega Absol has a retreat cost of 1, and Nihilego has a retreat cost of 1. So when you're playing a deck list like this, that early pacing and the early damage matters a lot, which is why we are running 2 copies of X Speed, just to be able to get out of the active if we are leading a Mega Absol or a Nihilego, because the Pokemon we want in the active spot early in the game is Naganadel. And again, a big aspect of the metagame right now in Altaria is a big, benefactor of this, is that Copycat has massively buffed specifically stage 1 Pokemon, which has changed the game a lot, like in a way that we didn't really understand. Also, Chingling being common right now, and of course, canceling out your ability to play rare candy. Stage 1 Pokemon are in a very uniquely well-positioned like pocket of the meta right now. That might change moving forward, but at least right now, stage 1 Pokemon are very, very strong. And you might be looking at this thinking, well, you know, we're playing Naganadel, we're playing Nihilego, like, do we need to play, like, you know, like, they're Ultra Beasts, right? And typically you would see that Poison Ultra Beast package played with Lucamine and Guzzlord, but I think people realize that, you know, Guzzlord is a good Pokemon, but Mega Absol kind of is the exact same thing, but just kind of a little bit better. They both have 170 HP. They're both worth multiple prizes, right? So it doesn't really matter which one you're playing, because most of the time your opponent is going to win if they KO one or the other. And Mega Absol has, you know, very similar damage output, right? 80 damage for 2. And you don't have to play Lucamine, right, when you're playing Mega Absol, which is a big deal. None of our other Pokemon have high energy attack costs. So it's pretty easy for us to commit energies to Naganadel and Mega Absol, and then you even have leftover energies to attach to the Darkrai, which is an interesting thing here about the deck list. I think Darkrai is a really good card. My only issue with Darkrai is that its retreat cost is 2, right? So again, theoretically speaking, we're playing 5 other basic Pokemon in the deck, so it's very unlikely that we do lead Darkrai. So it's one of those things, right? I think that the extra damage for Darkrai definitely can win you games. You know, the Poison Barb, Poison damage, plus the Nightmare Aura damage on top of Mega Absol will be enough to take KOs, and I think that's the whole idea here. And Darkrai is going to be just really decent in general, you know, early on in the game, even if you just don't have Mega Absol, right? It's like Naganadel's hitting for 40, which plus the Poison damage with Nihilego, if you have 2, then that's 70, plus the Darkrai ping, that's 90. It's a lot of damage. Like, it really does add up, especially if your opponent doesn't get off to a hot start, which sometimes does happen. So this deck list did fall to Hydreigon, like high roll version in the finals, but I think that this is sort of the other side of the coin right now. And this is what we're seeing with Mega Absol, is like, how can we throw 1 or maybe sometimes 2 copies of Mega Absol in a deck list that is already you know, built out to do most of the work, right? It's just sort of, you know, do we have at least that one Absol that we can throw in the late game and then just finish off the game? That's what Absol really does. So not something that I really expected with this metagame, but we saw sort of an inkling of that really early. People were playing, you know, Mega Absol with Pichu and Oricorio, which carried through most of the game, and then you would come through Mega Absol late in the game to finish off things. And I think that's what Mega Absol does. You know, it's not something that's like the core of the deck. It's not going to necessarily win you games outright, but it is going to finish games. It's a very strong finisher. The only limiting factor to Mega Absol in my mind was, at least originally, I was like, well, it's got 2 dark energies, so it's like, what are we pairing with it? Hydreigon was the obvious answer there. You know, now we've seen things like Naganadel and various other options. So I really do think Mega Absol's a strong Pokemon, but really is just sort of a flavor card that we throw into a lot of these other dark type strategies, whether that's aggro, Naganadel, or high roll Hydreigon, 2 very, very strong packages that you can just throw Mega Absol in and be kind of fine with, you know what I mean? Like, that's honestly the development of the metagame, and we talked about that so much on Friday. I showed you like 4 or 5 Absol decks where I was like, listen, like, these are all good at different things, and like, if things work out properly for you, it's really, really difficult to beat a deck list like this when you have to go through double Naganadel, Poison Nihilego, and then a Mega Absol. Like, that's hard. And we have to go through double Hydreigon and then Absol. Like, you can't really beat that. So they're all kind of high roll strategies, but the Naganadel one definitely a little bit more consistent than you know, Hydreigon is. It's a 1-card combo, easier to find with Copycat than the rare candy combo is. Let's take a look at what the Sigma's deck, 12-2, so a great record. And again, Mega Altaria, probably the most represented deck here in day 2. We'll take a look at that data later in the video, but let's take a look at his deck list, the 3rd highest placing deck here, and this is pretty standard. Okay, so this is what I think most people are settling on for Mega Altaria, which I'm a little bit disappointed about, not in the deck list itself, but in that there's not that much diversity with Mega Altaria. That's what happens with metagames, is people figure out sort of just the best list and then everybody plays it. But I think Mega Altaria uniquely has the opportunity to kind of be very flexible, right? I think it has a lot of potential. I think the Giratina list is probably the other option to that. But Mega Altaria can play Chingling, so it's really kind of the only deck, or one of the only decks right now, that you'll always see Chingling in. And I think that the metagame really, again, is warping around Chingling. It's sort of like, okay, how are we... you know, what can we play that's not going to get really disrupted by, you know, the Chingling lock, right? And that's really where we're at right now. But either way, Chingling's still really, really good. And then we have, of course, 1 star drop Jirachi, which is just like that Leaf over Absol, or the Heatmore and Blaziken, right? The 30 damage to the bench. The cool thing about Jirachi is that you can hit the active, which is relevant sometimes, especially with Rocky Helmet. Like, you can Just bring it in, deal 30 to the active, maybe a slap a Rocky Helmet onto it, and that's plus 50 damage. Excuse me, which does come in clutch a lot of times, right? Plus maybe that chip damage with Chingling, or maybe sometimes we go into like the Do the Wave Altaria before a Mega Altaria. There's a lot of opportunities with this deck list. The Do the Wave Altaria sometimes actually acts as like your second Pokemon in the stretch, like in the lineup here before you go into Mega Altaria, which is pretty cool. But one of the things I really love about Mega Altaria is that you can set up multiple Mega Altarias pretty easily. It's kind of the same thing as like Mega Absol, but most Absol decks now are really only playing one copy of Absol, and Blaziken could do this, but it wasn't as easy because it discarded an energy when it attacked. But Mega Altaria allows you to effectively set up 2 Mega Altarias, and unless your opponent has Cyrus or something, then you can kind of just bounce between them. But of course, as we see, Cyrus is a very common card right now, and Copycat is crazy because so many decks that really aren't even playing like a ton of draw support are drawing through their entire decks, because maybe they catch like a big Copycat early in the game, and maybe they like thin out their cards of their deck with Pokeballs or researches that's, like early on in the game, and then all of a sudden, it's the end of the game and they don't have any cards in their deck, right? And they're not even playing like a real draw support. It's just that Copycat just happened to give them like +4 card advantage, and then they just ended up drawing all their cards. Like, we're seeing that a lot, which I think is really interesting. Copycat to me also one of the more important cards of this new metagame. But yeah, Mega Altaria. It's Mega Altaria. It's so consistent. It reminds me of again, it reminds me of Genetic Apex Pikachu, but it's very similar to like that Poison Naganadel package, right? Where it's like, even if we do end up going second, or if we go first, it's not great, but if we go second, like the amount of opportunities for us to just get into Mega Altaria going second is crazy, right? Because it's just like we lead Chingling, it's free retreat, we go second, we can find Mega Altaria turn 2 basically every game with Copycats, and then thinning our deck with Lycia, and then all of a sudden we're just hitting for 130. So it's very similar to kind of like, it's the perfect in-between, I think, right now of like Suicune Greninja and Hydreigon Absol. Like, it's like the deck that's like more consistent than any of them, but doesn't necessarily have the same like oomph in the mid to late game. And it's very basic. Like, when you play Altaria, you know exactly what's going to happen, but it has enough tools. I love the Rocky Helmets here. I like the Mars as well. 1 Copycat, 1 Mars. I love that. The extra healing with Indeedee can matter. Like, you could play Altaria to be like exceptionally tanky, which we do see versions of this deck playing like that, right? We see Giratina double Indeedee, maybe Pokemon Center Lady in there, or maybe, Giant Capes instead of Rocky Helmets. I think the breakpoints right now are a little bit awkward, but if Hydreigon really becomes super common, then we probably don't really need the Rocky Helmet if you think about it, because Hydreigon does damage to itself. So, we can kind of hit it for 130 and be okay with that. So I think Altaria has room to evolve, to develop, but I think it's been sort of the constant over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I think that the other decks are sort of evolving around Mega Altaria, and I think eventually, maybe, because we have a couple of weeks left of the season, maybe Altaria does change. Maybe it evolves a little bit, right? So there's definitely room for Altaria to develop. I'll leave that to all of the players who basically, run the show here and come up with deck lists. But yeah, Mega Altaria still really consistent, really strong. Let's take a look at Joni's deck here, the 4th highest placing deck of the tournament, and this is going to be Suicune Greninja. Now, what's interesting here, though, this is actually a classic version of Suicune Greninja, so I was actually wrong. This is like the classic version, and for some reason, this is what we see here. Let me check out Nascon's deck. Because this is also, I guess it's the same thing, but we played Frogadier in place of Giratina. So anyway, maybe I'm wrong here, but okay. So I had initially recommended, or I guess talked about sort of the version of Suicune Greninja that was playing 2 Greninja EXs and not Giratina. Because to me, that was like becoming the more popular version. But as we see here, the 2 highest placing versions of Suicune and Greninja are in fact 1 Water Shifting Stream and then 2 Water Shuriken Greninjas, right? So 1 Greninja EX, 2 non-Greninja EXs. This deck is playing Giratina. So that's the big question. Of course, should we be playing Giratina? Should we not? Again, this is the highest placing Suicune deck. So, no matter kind of what's becoming more popular, and again, I've been hearing the question for like 2-3 weeks now, like how should we be playing Suicune Greninja now? I think that there's a lot of benefit to playing it other ways. It's just, whenever I take a look at the standings of tournaments, like I still see Giratina and I still see 2 Water Shurikens. So like this to me might still be the way that we're playing the deck list. I don't know. Maybe Any people commenting down below who play a lot of Suicune Greninja, because I haven't played a lot of this deck this season. I've decided not to. If you're somebody who places well in tournaments, like if you're any of these players that play Suicune Greninja religiously, comment down below and give me your interpretation of this, because I've seen it both ways. And I really do like the double shifting stream Greninja EXs, but every time I take a look at the standings, it's always the more classic version with 2 Water Shurikens and 1 Giratina. Sometimes not Giratina, but this is kind of what we're looking at here to be the most common version. Still double Cape here, double Irida. 1 Cyrus, 1 May, so no copycat in the deck list, which is interesting. But I think we're playing enough Pokemon in this deck where May actually probably, benefits you a bit more. The interesting thing about Suicune is it's still kind of the only, well, maybe Entei comes back, but it's really the only legendary Pulse Pokemon, right? In between Raikou, Entei, and Suicune that's in the meta right now. And that to me is interesting because realistically speaking, you have your draw engine, right? So other decks kind of benefit playing Copycat, whereas you probably don't because your hand size is always so big anyway. So that's where I think May kind of fits into the deck really well. And I really like this, right? So May here, and we're playing a lot of Pokemon and multiple copies of most of our Pokemon, right? So like if we play May, it's almost guaranteed that we're going to find a Greninja of some sort off the May, right? So I do like the May a lot. Giant Capes, Iridas, it's tanky, it's consistent, very, very consistent. Going second, still a strong deck. It's got that high roll potential with Greninjas. We have Cyrus in the deck list. So I still think Suicune Greninja is a top deck. I just don't think that it's, again, something that's really being counterplayed very heavily. It was counterplayed a lot, like going into that second week, because I made a big fuss about Suicune Greninja, and I was like, listen, we got to deal with this, and everybody was like playing, Decidueye and all this different stuff. And I was like, all right, we're good. No, I think it's really going to solidify itself as sort of that third, deck in the top 3 right now. Well, I guess there's multiple like Absol decks, but you either play like Dark Package Absol, Altaria, or Suicune Greninja. Like those are the best packages in the game right now. Suicune's still strong. Greninja's still ridiculous. I mean, every deck's playing bench damage. And to be fair, we don't have anything in the game that can stop that. It's really the one strategy right now that everybody's going to play because there's really no counterplay to it, right? I mean, why not play bench damage and Cyrus? Like that's the best way to play Pocket right now. So, maybe in the B1 mini set or the B1A mini set, it's going to be confusing with the set codes now. Whatever it ends up being called comes out in 3 weeks or so. I think that set really should implement a Pokemon or something to protect people's bench from taking damage, whether that's via attacks or abilities or both. I think that's kind of needed for the metagame because right now that's really just where every deck is going. That's where Blaziken Heatmore went. That's where Absol's going. Altaria went that way. Like it's just the strongest strategy in the game. So any, types or strategies in the game that don't have that are going to be behind. And to be fair, I think most types do. Does Grass have anything like that? I don't know if it does actually. But we know that Hitmonlee exists for fighting and Absol and Heatmore. Like I think almost every type has a Pokemon like that now. But anyway, Suicune Greninja. I don't know what to say about it other than that this is the type of list that keeps placing the highest in tournaments. So comment down below if you have any input. But definitely interesting. We have to go all the way down here to 12th place to take a look at our next version of a deck here, which is Magnezone Oricorio. And again, I still think that this is a good option because I don't think any other deck can really employ Oricorio as effectively. Like you can play Oricorio in like really any deck list and it can kind of just be there to like, extend the game into the late game. And some strategies benefit from that. But I really think that this is a deck list and one of the only decks in the game that can really play lightning energies without an energy accelerator like Pichu and then comfortably have Oricorio in the active spot while you commit energies to it, because on the back line, Magnezone is setting itself up with energy. So it's really like the perfect partner right now for Oricorio. And I think that for right now, at least, Oricorio's impact in the metagame is very much lesser. Hydreigon everywhere, Water Shuriken Greninja everywhere. Every deck seemingly kind of has a Pokemon to deal with Oricorio, which is fine. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that Oricorio is already doing its job for the metagame, and that's a great thing, right? So it's already doing its job, but I think that if you wanted to play Oricorio right now, my only recommendation would be to play with Magnezone. Everything else feels like you're kind of forcing it a little bit, which is fine. If Oricorio is very dominant of a Pokemon, which early in the season it was, of course, just because that's just how the metagames work, right? People don't really build their lists around Oricorio at the beginning of seasons, but at this point they are, and I think if we're playing Oricorio, you have to play with Magnezone. But Yeah, it's a list that hasn't changed much. In fact, this deck is actually playing double Copycat and May, so maximum consistency here. We almost always are just getting the Pokemon we want here between all of the different consistency cards. One Cyrus, one Pokemon Center Lady, couple of Capes in there, and then Chingling in here as well, because why not lead Chingling? It's also a good card, you know? Yeah, so that I'm curious, you know, we don't see a lot of Chinglings at the top of the standings this week, although I guess we do because it's in Altaria. So I guess Chingling is still prominent, right? I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, the metagame definitely becoming a little bit more condensed, right? Let's take a look at SG Radorm's deck here from Spain, or Radar M? I don't know. The names are tough, man. This is going to be Altaria Giratina, which I'm actually liking more and more as time goes on. So this is a bit of a more, you know, how do I describe it? It's just a more, what would be the word for this? It's just a more condensed, like straightforward version of Mega Altaria, right? Double Giratina, double Indeedee, double Altaria. I mean, we're just guns ablazing here. You know, we're back in the Broken Space Bellow world. We still got the Rocky Helmet, so we're not playing Giant Cave here, but we are playing red as well. So it's a bit more of an aggressive deck list, right? Multiple Pokemon here that can hit for 130. And I do like this deck in the sense that, you know, if Giratina's in the active spot, like, why not just double up Broken Space Bellow, keep it alive with double Indeedees? Like, you know, having to go through a Giratina EX that's running Psychic Energies and can attack on the third turn, and then have to turn around and then go through Mega Altaria, like, that's a difficult thing to deal with, especially with, like, the 20 to 40 healing every turn from Indeedee. And that's the concept here. Very straightforward, but very aggressive. It's less of a, you know, it's still very consistent, extremely consistent, but it's less of like a toolbox type Altaria deck. It's a very linear, sort of straight to the point strategy that's very effective, and I think we might see more of this, you know, moving forward. However, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that Giratina does get one hit KO'd by Hydreigon because it gets hit for weakness, right? And that's obviously not something that we love, but, you know, maybe we get the first attack off. Maybe Giratina goes down, and that's fine, you know what I mean? So it's interesting for sure, but I still think Giratina is a really strong Pokemon, and I think we're seeing it a bit in Suicune, but I think it has a lot of potential in the meta right now as well. Next up, Hyperion N from Finland here, another player that we see all the time at the top of the standings. This is Crobat. Shout out to Crobat EX. And again, for the exact same reason, right? This to me is actually the exact in between. Like if you saw the Naganadel deck and you saw the Hydreigon deck, this is literally the exact midpoint between those two decks. We're playing a stage 2 rare candy deck, but it's also playing Nihilego and it's playing Poison and it's got a low energy attack cost, right? So it's like, if you wanted to play, you know, Hydreigon Absol, but you didn't want to play Hydreigon Absol, and if you wanted to play Naganadel Absol, but you didn't, this is the deck you play. And I think there's actually potential for this. Again, for the same concept of going through, you know, that big HP Crobat EX that can hit for really early on in the game, and then have to go through Mega Absol. Like, that can be difficult, or even sometimes go through double Crobats, right? It's just another Pokemon that is a little bit more consistent now with Copycat, and really not a bad Pokemon. I think Crobat was something that was sort of disrespected a lot. For quite some time. It was never that bad of a Pokemon, but I think now, why not, right? We're just throwing one Mega Absol in, which again, does make the deck better, right? Because it just the fact of it, right? I mean, we don't have to rely on double Crobat. We just need like one Crobat, and then we go into Mega Absol after, and it's, who would have thought, right? It's strong. And that's kind of where we're at. Keep in mind, the Zubat here for 10 damage also does poison, right? So if you do start your game off going second with Zubat in the active, and you can get a couple of Naganadels, or Nihilegos rather, on your bench, like, all of a sudden, like, you're dealing enough to KO that Chingling in the active, or 2-hit KO Oricorio. Like, it's kind of legit. I'm not going to lie. You know what I mean? So I like this deck. I do. I really like the Crobat Absol deck here. So if you wanted to play basically like the deck that wasn't either of those decks, but very similar, then that's sort of something for you. And then I guess here, if we go down to, well, actually, let's take a look at this Quad Absol deck. This is Sharia's Plays, by the way. Former Pocket Meds tournament champion, and also just one of the best players in the entire game, from India. He was playing Quad Absol. And this is, again, more of like a streamlined version, right? So we're playing Nihilego and we're playing Leap over Absol, but like nothing else, right? So we're not really dealing with the whole Rocky Helmet, or not Rocky Helmet. We're not dealing with the whole, you know, Rare Candy Stage 2 package, or the, you know, Naganadel package. We're just like, hey, like, I'm just going to play Leap over Absol and Poison Barb. And like, that sometimes is just enough, right? So it's a little bit less of like a, you know, it's less of a deck that is not centered around Absol, right? Like, the strategy here literally is just playing both Absols and hoping that you you get the right one out and that you just get Nihiligos on the bench. Like, it's very, you're only playing 6 Pokemon in the deck list. Leaves you a ton of room. We can play double Cyrus, even a Guzman, double PCL in here. So, there are benefits to strategies like this that are playing less Pokemon, maybe a little bit less involved in terms of their capabilities and, what Pokemon you can use, but a lot more options, right? With Mars and Red Card, double PCL, Cyrus, like, it's a fun deck. This is a cool strategy too. Again, so many opportunities for Mega Absol. I think that the card is very flexible. This is definitely a deck that's a little bit more centered around Mega Absol, right? But I do like the simplicity of a deck list like this. And even though I got, I don't know what place Shuria's was, only 22nd place, this could very well just be like another deck that's very common, right? At some point in the metagame. And then, what is this? Raquel Matos from Brazil, 8-3. This is our highest placing Blaziken Heatmore deck list. So, yeah, I think that the meta is moving away from Blaziken a little bit. It's just the other decks, I think, like, if you're playing a rare candy deck like this, like, you would probably just rather play Hydreigon. I think it's just sort of similar, but maybe a little bit better. Yeah, I don't think Mega Blaziken is bad, but again, like, a lot of chingling in the metagame, right? With Altaria, there's a lot of Suicune Greninjas running around. Even the Mega Absol decks, like, they're kind of all built to deal with Mega Blaziken in a pretty unique way. So, the meta definitely shifting away from Mega Blaziken, which typically happens, right? Every deck sort of has this little, if you're following my hand motion here, it goes up, it peaks, and then it kind of gets counterplayed and it kind of plateaus again. And we're in that sort of that plateau period with Mega Blaziken. What's interesting is that Mega Blaziken did it twice this year, or this season. It started off as the #1 most played deck, got counterplayed heavily, dipped back down, and then rose back up as the deck sort of changed with Heatmore, and now it's plateauing again. So people just love Blaziken. It is sort of the most popular Pokemon, I guess, other than Absol. But yeah, definitely not something that's as well positioned as it was, for brief moments in time right now. So anyway, that's kind of all of the top decks here, at least the top versions of all of the decks. Shout out to all of these players here. There might be some discrepancies between these lists, but I don't have all day. We're already 35 minutes into the video, so we're going to go into the last portion of Meta Monday, which is covering the metagame data. Because again, I always tell people this is really interesting information. The data here is really helpful. It gives us an actual understanding of what's going on. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you. Comment down below. Let me know that you made it this far. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And let's go into the metagame tab here. So what are we noticing? The most played deck was definitely Mega Altaria. In fact, this Greninja Mega Absol deck list saw quite a bit of play. This is what's standing out to me right off the bat, but struggled. So this was definitely maybe a flavor of the week moment. I did showcase this deck because it was it was trending going into this weekend, but this performance tells me that this probably is not a deck list that I would maybe consider at least right now. And again, the win rates here, you got to take them with a grain of salt just because, people don't they just drop from the tournament or they don't make it into matches, right? So every win rate that you see here has been inflated negatively. So just keep that in mind. Like Mega Altaria here probably was closer to like a 53% win rate if you don't count the people that just didn't show up, right? So anyway, win rates are all relative, even though they might not be that accurate. They're all relative to each other, so they're still valuable to take a look at. But Mega Altaria and Indeedee, not only the most played deck by a wide margin this week, 20% of the meta share, but also had the only deck out of any of these really that had above a 50% win rate, which is impressive. So, again, consistency is king when it comes to win rates, and I think that when ranked comes out, Mega Altaria still going to be like a really strong option. I don't see anything really being like significantly counterplayed to Mega Altaria, so I think it'll probably remain very, very relevant as time goes on. But yeah, 20% meta share is crazy. That's by far the highest that we've seen so far this season of any deck list. Mega Blaziken still the second most played deck here, 10% meta share, but did struggle, like I said. Only 45% win rate, not a lot of them placing really high in the tournament. Next up is Hydreigon, but the Absol decks are definitely split a lot of different ways, right? So yeah, Hydreigon Mega Absol here, third, so 8% of the meta share. Greninja Absol actually was the second most played version of it at 6.5% meta. Mega Absol Darkrai here, 5%, and then Naganadel down here, and Quad Absol down here as well, right? So Mega Absol, if you combine all of the different, dark decks playing Absol, they probably added up to be quite a bit. But yeah, none of them actually had super high win rates, other than if we go down the Quad Absol deck, right? So again, it kind of makes sense to me, though. Even Naganadel had a bit of a low win rate. These are smaller sample sizes, but Hydreigon always has a low average win rate, just because of it's a high roll deck, right? So it's not going to have like a super consistent win rate, but it is going to win stuff, right? It's going to pop off sometimes. So that's why I got first place. But it's important to note, right? I mean, for tournament play, Hydreigon is very dominant, especially if people get a little bit lucky with it. But, you know, for ranked battles, would I really consider me playing Hydreigon? Maybe not so much, right? Just because of its overall consistencies. Even Suicune Greninja struggled. However, as we see here, this is Greninja EX with Suicune. So this is what's interesting, right? Not many people played it. Only 30 people played it, but its win rate was really, really good. So we didn't see any at the very top of the standings, right? If we go back to the standings, what was the highest placing Greninja? Oh, down here. So there was Magma Prelux, and then, of course, SG Fededet from Spain. I don't know. Shout out to both these players, so I didn't showcase this deck. But anyway, one Indeedee in here is crazy. So they've kind of swapped out Giratina for Indeedee, and now they're playing 2 Greninja EX and 1 Water Shuriken. So like I said, like the information here is really interesting. Shout out to these players, but the Suicune stuff is still confusing to me. This is why I need the smart people who play Suicune to comment down below, because it's just not something that I really do often myself. But yeah, the version with 2 Greninja EX has a way higher win rate, right, at almost 55%, whereas the other version playing only 1 Greninja EX is above, or below rather, 50, only 47%. So that's interesting. More people played it though, so that's probably why it was higher up in the standings, just, you know, from probability alone. But yeah, I would love to see how this develops. I really, really would, because to me, that's probably one of the more interesting things right now about the metagame. But yeah, this Quad Absol deck, definitely a big standout. It's a small sample size, so I wouldn't read like too much into it. Arceus really, really struggled. So I guess for whatever the reason, the Arceus stuff definitely not doing very well. Mega Pidgeot. This is an interesting thing. We covered it kind of briefly during the week, but it's to me, it's not a real meta strategy. Mega Pidgeot is cool. It's totally fine, but when you compare it to like all of the other top decks available to you, like Mega Pidgeot is just not in the same tier. Espeon and Sylveon doing really well here, 20 and 16. That's interesting. Also the Crobat list popping off 24 and 15. So maybe we have to test the Crobat stuff a little bit more. Same here with like the Altaria Giratina deck, right? Which always has an incredible win rate, but a smaller sample size. So very interesting. If we filter by win rate, we'll see some standouts here. Of course, these are some decks that made day 2, but only one person played them, like Weezing Absol. You know, only one person playing Guzzler Naganadel yet again, went 7 and 3, right? Just not a bad deck. There was one Jolteon Pikachu deck that went 7 and 3, but yeah. Also Rapidash. So these are deck lists that we're going to cover later this week in sort of our off meta showcase, because, you know, they didn't place extremely high in the tournament, but they did make day 2, so we want to showcase them. Like this Rapidash deck and this Leafeon deck. We'll cover them later in the week for sure. But yeah, Mega Altaria Giratina, definitely a bit of a standout here. And if we go down here, Crobat Mega Absol, Quad Absol, very interesting. Even Espeon and Indeedee, which we did see in day 2. These are interesting decks that we'll have to cover later this week. But anyway, that's the metagame tab. If we take a look at day 2 here, I know some people are curious about like day 2 conversion rates. We see that Mega Altaria was the biggest standout, right? I mean, if you go to day 1, it was the most played deck, but that's 20% meta share. Day 2, it was 35%. This might be one of the most dominant tournament performances we've ever seen, actually, if you kind of put it into context. Like literally 35% of day 2 was Mega Altaria, and it had a 60% win rate in day 2. Like, this to me is the top deck. In fact, it might even like justify its own segmentation in the metagame. I don't know really what we can play to counter Mega Altaria. There's not that many available strategies, I feel like, that are counter to Mega Altaria, but that is what we have to be doing right now, is we have to take a look at the data and be like, you know what, I know Mega Altaria didn't win this week, but it is the deck. I mean, there's nothing here that really comes even close, to be honest. 35% of the day 2 meta share is absolutely ridiculous. Going from 20 to 35 is crazy. That's insane. Okay, anyway, Suicune Greninja did do very well in day 2, which is interesting. Blaziken struggled a lot in day 2, but was the 3rd most represented deck. Yeah, Suicune Greninja is just dominating. It really is just such a good deck list. Hydreigon popped off, though. The 5 Hydreigon players in day 2 went 13 and 4. That's crazy, too. I guess one did win the tournament, so that's probably why the data there's a little bit skewed, because he won like probably 6 games. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of crazy. Yeah, I mean, a lot of different decks in day 2, but some of these are interesting, right? I mean, Rapidash, Crobat, Jolteon, Weezing, like Leafeon. We'll have to cover these later. The Espeon stuff is interesting to me, but in this dark heavy metagame, I don't know if I love it, right? Hydreigon is going to see a lot more play now because it got first place. But anyway, there's the metagame data. That's kind of a long meta Monday today, isn't it? Almost 45 minutes. Hey, we do what we love here on the channel, and we love what we do, right? I mean, I have so much fun doing this. The tournament series has been an absolute blessing, not just because, you know, I'm not like being, you know, facetious when I say that. Like, I mean, like it's given me the opportunity to have so much good data and to really kind of sink my teeth in to really understand the metagame and make content like this. So if you guys enjoy these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be a tier list, but it's going to be different. It's going to be our ranked battles tier list. That's right. We are going to be pivoting towards more of like a ranked meta focused you know, stream of content as the ranked battles come out this week. So tomorrow will be a tier list, but it will be our ranked battles tier list, which is going to be different than a tournament tier list. We have to look at things a little bit differently, right? And you guys aren't going to want to miss that. I think there's going to be some spicy takes in there for sure. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Yeah, guys, I got nothing else. I really don't. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys later. We'll go live maybe Wednesday night or Thursday night for ranked battles. I know it's Thanksgiving this weekend, but definitely go and register for PMPT number 10, because we probably will be doing some type of an invitational tournament where the top players of our standings get invited to our invitational tournament. We got to figure out pricing for that and sponsors, but for this week, definitely go and play. Take a little bit of a break from ranked mode. Support the tournament scene, because this is really where the metagame is developed and is founded upon, right? So go participate. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I would definitely recommend it. Link down in the description below. But that being said, guys, there it is. There it is. There's Meta Monday. What do you guys think of the current metagame? Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Peace out. Bye. Bye.